The microphone is cold against my palm. I keep forgetting to hold it properly, keep letting it drift away from my mouth while I talk, and then I have to lean back in and start over. This is the fourth time I have tried to record something worth keeping. The first three ended with me just sitting here, staring at the red light, unable to form words. My name is Arthur. I used to be a night DJ at this station, Double Carl, in a city that does not matter anymore. I played jazz records from midnight until 4 in the morning, the kind of shift that nobody listens to except insomniacs and truck drivers. It was a quiet job, solitary. I liked it that way. I liked the dim glow of the console lights and the way the soundproofing made the booth feel like a separate world. I liked that I could go entire nights without speaking to another human being, just letting the music do the work. That was before. Now the music is gone. The records are still here, thousands of them, stacked in their sleeves, but I do not play them anymore. There is no point. Nobody is listening for comfort anymore. Nobody is calling in with requests. The phone lines have been dead for weeks, and even if they were working, I do not know who would be on the other end. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because I had just finished my set and was packing up to leave when the power flickered. Not the normal flicker you get during a storm. This was different. The lights went out completely for maybe 3 seconds, and when they came back on, the whole building felt different, heavy, like the air had thickened while I was not paying attention. I stepped outside and saw the sky was wrong. It was still daylight, still bright, but there was a quality to the light that I cannot describe. Like looking through dirty glass, like the sun was there but had forgotten how to be warm. I walked to my car and tried to start it. Nothing. No click, no grind, just silence. I tried again. Same thing. I looked down the street and saw other people standing beside their dead vehicles, staring at the sky, their faces slack with confusion. That was 5 weeks ago, or 6. I have lost track of the days. The power never came back. The phones never came back. The silence that followed was absolute. Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of everything that had once filled the air. No traffic, no distant sirens, no airplanes. Just wind, and the occasional creak of buildings settling, and the sound of my own footsteps on pavement. I walked home that first day, not knowing yet that I would never leave again. My apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had no elevator because the electricity was gone. I climbed the stairs and sat in my dark living room and watched the sun go down. That was the first night I heard them. They sound like whispers. Not words exactly, more like the shape of words, the outline of speech without any meaning behind it. They come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I spent hours that first night convinced it was my imagination, some auditory hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But the whispers did not stop when I covered my ears. They did not stop when I turned on my battery-powered radio and tried to drown them out with static. They are inside the static. They live in it. It took me 3 weeks to figure out what was happening. 3 weeks of watching the news fragments I could pick up from other stations, listening to the fragments of broadcasts that still managed to cut through the interference. 3 weeks of hearing the same stories repeated in whispered tones. The power grids failed. The military bases went silent. Then the cities went dark. Then the people started disappearing. Not all at once. Slowly at first. One neighbor, then another. The family across the hall who used to argue every night at 10. The old man downstairs who walked his dog at dawn. Gone. Their doors left open. Their belongings still arranged in their homes like they had just stepped out for a moment and would be right back. I started locking my door after the 3rd week. I started keeping a hammer by the bed. I stopped sleeping at night because that was when the whispers were loudest, when the air grew coldest, when I could feel something moving just beyond the edge of my vision. I would sit in the dark with my radio tuned to this station, to the dead air of my own broadcast booth, and I would listen to the static and try to convince myself that the shapes forming in the hiss were just my tired brain playing tricks. That was before I saw one. It happened 4 nights ago. I had finally worked up the courage to leave my apartment, to see if there was anyone left in the building. The hallways were dark and cold. The emergency lights had died days before. I walked with my hand against the wall, counting doors, measuring my progress by touch. The thing was standing in the stairwell at the end of the hall. It was tall, too tall, with limbs that bent at wrong angles, and skin that looked like paper left in the rain. Its face was not a face. It was a suggestion of a face, a hint of features that had been erased and then badly redrawn. It made no sound. It simply stood there, watching me with eyes that were not eyes but dark hollows, and I felt my blood go cold in a way I had never felt before. I do not know how I made it back to my apartment. I do not remember running. I just remember slamming the door and leaning against it, breath ragged, heart pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. I remember the way the air changed in that stairwell, the way it grew thin and sharp and wrong. I remember the whisper that followed me all the way down the hall, brushing against the back of my neck like cold breath. It knew I was there. It let me go. I do not know why. Maybe it was not hungry. Maybe it was playing with me the way a cat plays with a mouse before the end. Maybe it was just waiting to see what I would do. I stayed in my apartment for 2 more days. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I just sat in the dark with my radio, listening to the static, trying to find a voice that was not whispering. And then, on the 3rd day, I made a decision. This station is not far from my apartment, just a few blocks. I had passed it every day on my way to work for years, never thinking much about it. It was just a building, a job, a place I went to fill the hours between sleeping and waking. Now it is my refuge. I came here because I knew the equipment would work. The old transmitters, the analog systems, the things that do not need computers or satellites. They still run on the backup generators in the basement. I do not know how much fuel is left. I do not know how long they will keep running. But for now, for tonight, I am speaking into this microphone and hoping that someone, somewhere is listening. The whispers are quieter here. I do not know why. Maybe it is the walls. Maybe it is the soundproofing. Maybe it is just that I am finally doing something, finally breaking the silence with my own voice, and that is enough to push them back. I do not know how long that will last. I do not know if I can hold them off forever, but I am going to keep talking, as long as I can, as long as the generator keeps running, as long as my voice holds out. I am going to keep talking into this microphone, and hoping that somewhere out there, another person is listening, another person is still alive, another person is sitting in the dark the way I am, and wondering if they are the last one. If you can hear me, do not answer. Do not call out. Do not do anything that might draw attention to yourself. Just listen. Just sit with your radio and listen to my voice and know that you are not alone. My name is Arthur. I am sitting in the broadcast booth of WKRL, a station that used to play jazz in the dead of night. The city is dark. The streets are empty. The things that are out there are not human anymore, and I do not know if they ever were. But I am still here. I am still talking. And as long as I can, I will keep talking. Through the night, through the static, through the whispers that curl around the edges of the signal, like fingers trying to find a way in. You are listening to the radio during a vampire apocalypse, and right now, in this moment, that is all any of us have left. The sky is a different color now than it was when I first came here. It has been 3 days since I started broadcasting, and I have watched the light change through the window of the booth, shifting from that pale, wrong brightness to something deeper, something that feels more like dusk even at noon. I do not know what that means. I am not sure I want to know. I have been sleeping in the break room down the hall. There is a couch there, old and lumpy, that belonged to the morning show host before everything happened. I do not know his name. I never met him. I worked nights, he worked mornings, and we existed in different worlds that never overlapped. I think about that sometimes. How many people I passed every day without ever really seeing them. How many voices I heard on the air without ever knowing their faces. Now they are all gone, and I do not even have names to mourn. The generator is still running. I check it every few hours, descending into the basement with a flashlight that is slowly dimming. I need to find more batteries. I need to find more fuel. I need to do a lot of things I do not know how to do, and the not knowing sits in my chest like a stone. Last night I walked to the edge of the building and looked out at the street. It was a mistake. I know that now. I should have stayed inside, should have kept my eyes on the walls and my hands on the microphone. But I needed to see. I needed to know if the world outside had changed, if there was any sign that something was still alive, still normal, still human. The cars were still there, lined up like a funeral procession, their windows dark and empty. The streetlights were dead. The traffic signals hung from their wires like broken promises. But there was something else too, a quality to the air that I cannot describe, a thickness, a weight, like the whole city was holding its breath. And then I heard them. Not the whispers this time. Something worse. A sound like wet cloth being dragged across pavement, slow and deliberate. I could not see the source, could not locate where it was coming from, but I felt it in my bones the way you feel a change in pressure before a storm. I backed away from the window. I pulled the door shut. I locked it with the deadbolt that had probably not been used in years, and I stood there in the dark with my heart hammering and tried to remember how to breathe. I did not sleep after that. I sat in the broadcast booth with the microphone off and listened to the silence, waiting for something to break it. Nothing did, but I know it was out there. I know it was listening too. The generator sputtered once this morning. Just a brief hesitation, a cough, and then it caught again. I went down to the basement with my fading flashlight and checked the fuel gauge. It is lower than I thought, lower than I want to admit. I do not know how many more days I have. A week, maybe. 2 if I am careful, and keep the power use to a minimum. I have started turning off the transmitter when I am not broadcasting. It is a risk. If I am not transmitting, there is no signal for anyone to find, no way for someone to know I am still here. But I cannot afford to waste the fuel. I cannot afford to be reckless. This is what survival has become, a series of calculations, a balancing act between hope and practicality. I want to believe that someone is out there listening, that my voice is reaching some dark room somewhere, some other person sitting alone in the quiet. But I cannot burn through what little I have left just for the comfort of that belief. I tried to find other stations today. I turned the dial slowly, carefully, scanning through frequencies the way I used to when I was young and full of curiosity. There was nothing, just static. Just that same empty hiss that fills the airwaves like a held breath. No music, no voices, no sign that anyone else is still broadcasting. I do not know what that means. It could mean I am the last one. It could mean the others have gone silent to protect themselves, the way I am doing now. It could mean something else entirely, something I do not have the words to name. There is a part of me that wants to leave this building, not to run away, exactly, but to see what is out there, to walk through the streets and check the houses and search for signs of life. I have been sitting in this booth for 3 days, talking to an audience that may not exist, and I feel the walls closing in. But I remember that sound, the wet dragging on pavement, the thing in the stairwell. I remember the hollow eyes and the wrong angles, and the way the air grew thin around it. I remember the whispers that seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling my head until I could not think, could not move, could not do anything but stand there and wait for it to end. I am not brave enough to go outside. I am not sure anyone could be brave enough for what is out there. I found something in the station manager's office today, a diary, leather-bound and old, with pages yellowed at the edges. It belonged to the man who built this station, who started broadcasting from this building back when radio was still new and the world was full of wonder. He wrote about the equipment and the music and the thrill of being heard. He wrote about the first time his voice reached someone in another state, another city, another life. I sat in his chair and read his words in the dim light of my failing flashlight, and I felt something I had not felt in weeks. Connection. Not to a specific person, not to a voice on the air, but to the idea of connection itself, to the hope that what we say matters, that it travels through the dark and finds someone waiting to hear it. That is why I am broadcasting right now. That is why I am sitting here with the microphone on and the transmitter running, and my voice reaching out into the silence. Because I have to believe that someone is listening. I have to believe that this matters, that my voice matters, that even in the middle of all this darkness, there is still a reason to speak. The whispers are back tonight. They have been quiet for most of the day, but as the sun goes down, they start to rise. Faint at first, just at the edge of hearing, then louder, then everywhere at once. I have learned to tune them out, mostly. I have learned to focus on my voice, and the microphone, and the steady hum of the generator. But sometimes, when I am not careful, they slip through. Sometimes I catch a word, or the shape of a word, and I feel my skin grow cold. I do not know what they want. I do not know if they want anything at all. Maybe they are just the sound of something that used to be human, something that forgot how to speak but still remembers how to make noise. Maybe they are echoes of all the voices that are gone, trapped in the static like ghosts in an old photograph. I think about the people who used to listen to this station, the insomniacs and the truck drivers, and the people who could not sleep. I think about the phone calls I used to take in the dead of night, strangers sharing their secrets with someone they would never meet. I think about the connection we had, however thin, however fleeting, and I wonder if any of them are still alive. I wonder if any of them are listening right now. If you are out there, if you can hear me, I want you to know something. I am scared too. I do not have all the answers. I do not know what caused this, or how it will end, or if it will ever end. But I am still here. I am still talking. And as long as I can, I will keep talking. Tonight, I am going to sleep in the booth. I pulled the couch from the break room and dragged it down the hall. It is safer here, surrounded by the equipment, surrounded by the things that still work. I will keep the door locked and the microphone off, and I will try to rest. Tomorrow, I will turn on the transmitter and speak again. The generator is still running. The walls are still holding. And somewhere out there, in the dark, I hope someone is listening. This is Arthur. You are listening to the radio during a vampire apocalypse, and I am still here. I have been at this station for 6 days now. 6 days of talking into a microphone that may or may not be reaching anyone. 6 days of watching the generator fuel gauge drop lower and lower. 6 days of listening to the whispers grow louder as the nights grow longer. But today something happened. Something I did not expect. Something that has changed everything. I heard a knock. It was early morning, just after dawn. I had not slept well, which is not unusual anymore. I was sitting in the booth with my head in my hands, trying to summon the energy to start another broadcast, when I heard it. A sound so out of place that I almost did not recognize it. 3 knocks. Steady. Measured. Human. I froze. I could not move. I could not breathe. My mind raced through a dozen possibilities, each one worse than the last. It could be one of them, one of the things outside, trying to lure me out. It could be my imagination, some auditory hallucination born of isolation and exhaustion. It could be nothing, just the building settling, just the wind, just my mind playing tricks. But I had to know, I had to see. I crept down the hallway with my hammer in my hand, moving as quietly as I could. The hallway was dark, the emergency lights long dead, and I had to feel my way along the wall. Every step felt like a lifetime. Every breath felt too loud. The knocking came again just as I reached the door. 3 knocks, exactly the same as before. The sound of a fist against wood. The sound of someone who knew how to knock, who had knocked on doors before, who had learned that rhythm somewhere in a life that was not this one. I pressed my eye to the peephole. At first I saw nothing, just darkness, the same darkness that filled the rest of the world. Then a shape moved, a face, a real face with eyes and skin and a mouth that was not a hollow, a woman. She looked tired, she looked scared, she looked human. I opened the door. She stumbled backward when she saw me, almost falling. I must have looked terrible, unshaven and hollow-eyed, clutching a hammer like a weapon. But she recovered quickly, and I saw her take a breath and steady herself. "My name is Elaine," she said. "I heard your broadcast. I walked here from across the city. It took me 3 days." I did not know what to say. I had been broadcasting for days, hoping someone was listening, but I had not actually prepared for what it would mean if someone heard me. I had not thought about what I would say to a real person, a living person, someone who had walked through the dark streets to find me. "Come in," I said finally. "Come inside." She walked past me into the lobby, and I closed the door behind her. I locked it. I checked it twice. Then I turned to look at her properly. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes that had seen things they should not have seen. Her clothes were worn and dirty. She carried a backpack, small and light, like she had not been able to bring much with her. She looked around the lobby with a desperate kind of hope, like she was searching for something that would make all of this make sense. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Your broadcast," she said. "I have a small radio, a portable one. I have been carrying it since the beginning. I heard you 3 nights ago and I could not believe it. A voice, a real voice. I had almost given up hope that there were any left." I showed her to the break room, the one with the old couch I had been sleeping on. She sat down heavily, like she had not rested in a long time. I gave her water, the last of the bottled water I had brought from my apartment, and she drank it slowly, carefully, like she was trying to make it last. "There are others," she said. "I think there are others. I have seen signs, fires sometimes in the distance, lights in windows, but I was too scared to approach, too scared to see if they were real or just traps." "Traps?" She looked at me, and I saw something in her expression that I had not seen before. Fear, real fear. Not the fear of the things outside, but the fear of something else. "The whispers," she said. "They can speak like us, they can sound like us, they can call out in the night with human voices and make you think someone is there, make you open your door, make you step outside where they can reach you." I felt my stomach drop. I had heard the whispers. I had heard the way they pressed against the edges of the broadcast, the way they seemed to reach for something beyond just sound. But I had not thought about that. I had not considered that they could mimic us, could use our own voices against us. "How do you know I am not one of them?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, a sad smile that did not reach her eyes. "Because you let me in," she said. "Because you gave me water. Because you did not try to hurt me. The whispers, they want us to open doors. They do not open them themselves." I thought about that. I thought about the door at the end of the hall, the one I had stood behind while a woman I did not know knocked and knocked. I thought about the sound of her fist against the wood, the rhythm of it, the humanness of it. I had heard the whispers, had heard them press against my mind, and I had still opened the door. Maybe I was still human. Maybe I was still something worth saving. Elaine stayed with me that day. We talked for hours. She told me about her life before, her apartment, her job, her family. She told me about the night it happened, the way the lights went out and the whispers began. She told me about the man in the apartment across the hall, the one who had opened his door when he heard his wife calling from the hallway, the one who had walked out into the darkness and never come back. His wife was already dead. The whispers had used her voice anyway. I told her about the thing in the the tall thing with the wrong angles and the hollow eyes. I told her about the sound of wet cloth dragging on pavement, the sound that I could not locate but could not forget. I told her about the generator and the fuel and the fear that I would run out of time. She listened. She did not interrupt. When I was finished, she said something that I have been thinking about ever since. "We are not safe here," she said. "I have been walking through this city for days, and I have seen what is out there. I have seen where they gather. I have seen the places they nest. This building, this station, it is not far from one of those places. I passed it on my way here. I did not know then that this was where I was going." She told me about the old church on Maple Street, the one with the stained glass windows and the tall spires. It had been abandoned, empty for years, but now it was something else, something dark, something that pulled the whispers toward it like a magnet. She had watched from a distance, hidden in the shadows, and she had seen them, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, moving in the darkness of the church like shadows given life. "That church is only 6 blocks from here," she said. 6 blocks. That is not far enough. That is not nearly far enough. I did not know what to say. I had been sitting in this station, broadcasting my voice into the darkness, thinking I was safe, thinking the walls and the locks and the generator would keep me alive. But I had not known about the church. I had not known how close they were. "We need to leave," she said. "We need to go somewhere else, somewhere farther away, somewhere they cannot reach." "Where?" I asked. She shook her head. "I do not know, but we cannot stay here. Not tonight. Not now that I have told you." I looked around the booth, at the equipment that had become my lifeline, at the microphone that had carried my voice into the darkness. I thought about the generator running low and the fuel running out and the whispers growing louder. I thought about the church 6 blocks away, filled with things that used to be human. Maybe she was right. Maybe we needed to leave. But there was a part of me, the part that had been speaking into the darkness for days, that wanted to stay, that wanted to keep talking, that wanted to believe that somewhere out there, someone else was listening, someone else was hoping, someone else was still alive. "We will talk about it tomorrow," I said. "Tonight we rest. Tonight we stay inside and we stay alive." She nodded. She did not argue. She curled up on the couch with her backpack clutched to her chest, and she fell asleep almost immediately. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, thinking about everything she had told me. Then I walked back to the booth. I turned on the microphone. I took a breath. "Hello," I said. "If you are out there, if you can hear me, I need you to know something. I am not alone anymore. There is someone here with me, a woman named Elaine. She walked through the darkness to find my voice." I paused. I thought about the church 6 blocks away. I thought about the whispers pressing against the edge of the broadcast. "Be careful out there," I said. "Be careful who you trust. The whispers can sound like us now. They can sound like anyone. But if you hear a voice, a real voice, a voice that speaks in words and not just shapes of words, that might be a voice worth following." I turned off the microphone. I sat in the darkness and listened to the silence, waiting for something to break it. Nothing did. But somewhere in the distance I heard a whisper. Not loud, not close. Just there, at the edge of everything, like a breath held too long. "This is Arthur. You are listening to the radio during a vampire apocalypse, and I am still here. We are still here. Elaine has been here for 3 days now. 3 days of sharing the small space of this station. 3 days of rationing the little food and water I had left. 3 days of trying to decide what comes next. She is quiet mostly. She spends hours sitting in the corner of the booth, watching the window, listening for sounds that I cannot hear. She says her ears have gotten sharper since the beginning. She says she can hear things now that she never could before. I believe her. The generator is dying. I know that now with a certainty that sits in my stomach like a stone. The fuel gauge is almost empty. I have been down to the basement 3 times today, checking and rechecking, hoping I was wrong. I am not wrong. There is maybe a day left, maybe less. We have been talking about what to do. Elaine wants to leave tonight, to gather what we can carry and walk out into the darkness while we still have the strength. She says the longer we wait, the harder it will be. She says the whispers are getting louder, pressing closer, and she does not know how much longer the walls of this building will hold. I want to argue with her. I want to tell her that we are safe here, that the doors are locked, and the windows are sealed, and the generator is still running. But I cannot. I have seen the way she looks at the windows. I have heard the way she talks about the church on Maple Street, the way her voice drops when she mentions it, the way her eyes go distant and dark. She knows something she has not told me. I am sure of it. But I do not ask. I am not sure I want to know. Last night, I dreamed about the man who built this station, the one whose diary I found in the office. In the dream, he was standing in the booth with me, his hand on my shoulder, his voice calm and steady. He told me that radio is about connection, about reaching across the darkness to find someone waiting on the other side. He told me that even when the signal is weak, even when the static is loud, the voice still travels. It still finds its way. I woke up with the weight of his hand still on my shoulder. Or maybe that was just the memory of it. I do not know anymore. The line between dreaming and waking has become thin. So thin that I sometimes cannot tell which side I am on. Elaine woke me this morning with a cup of water and a piece of bread. She had been exploring the building while I slept, searching for anything we might have missed. She found a storeroom in the basement, behind a door that had been painted shut. Inside there were boxes, old boxes, boxes that had not been opened in years. Inside the boxes were records. Not the vinyl records I used to play, but paper records. Handwritten logs from the early days of the station, when the man who built it was still alive and broadcasting every night. There were letters too, letters from listeners, letters from people who had heard his voice and wanted to tell him what it meant. I spent hours reading them. I sat on the floor of the storeroom with the flashlight between my teeth, and I read about the lives of people I would never meet. A woman in another state who said his voice helped her sleep at night. A truck driver who listened to him on long hauls across the country. A child who wrote a letter in crayon telling him that his show was her favorite. These were the people I had been speaking to. These were the people I had been hoping to reach. They were gone now, most of them, but their words were still here, still preserved in ink on yellowed paper. Their voices still echoed through the pages. I showed the letters to Elaine. She read them carefully, slowly, the way you read something that matters. When she was finished, she looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. "We need to keep broadcasting," she said, "as long as we can, as long as the generator lasts. This is what matters. This is what we are doing here." She was right. I knew she was right, but I also knew that the generator was running out, that the fuel was almost gone, that we did not have much time left. We spent the rest of the day planning. We went through the station room by room, cataloging what we had and what we could take. There was not much. A few cans of food from the break room, a first aid kit that was missing half its supplies, a battery-powered radio that Elaine had brought with her, a backpack that I had found in the manager's office, stuffed with papers and old photographs. We decided to leave at nightfall, not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice. The generator could not last another day, and once it died, the station would go dark. We would be sitting in silence with nothing to protect us, nothing to keep the whispers at bay. I turned on the microphone one last time. I wanted to say something to the people who might still be listening, the people I had been speaking to for days. I wanted to tell them that I was leaving, that the signal was dying, that they would not hear my voice again. But I could not find the words. I sat in the booth with the microphone warm in my hand, and I could not think of anything to say that would not sound like goodbye. So I played a record. The last record in the station, one booth since the beginning. A jazz record, old and worn, with scratches that popped and hissed through the speakers. I played it because I did not know what else to do. I played it because music does not need words, because it can say things that language cannot. The music filled the booth. It traveled through the transmitter, out into the darkness, reaching whoever might still be listening. I sat back and closed my eyes and let it wash over me, the sound of something that used to be human, something that used to be beautiful. When the record ended, I turned off the microphone. I unplugged the transmitter. I walked to the basement and stood beside the generator, listening to its labored hum, feeling its warmth against my skin. It sputtered, it coughed. It went quiet. The station went dark. The lights, the equipment, everything. I stood in the basement with the silence pressing in around me, and I felt something I had not felt in weeks. Loss, real loss, the loss of something that had been keeping me alive. Elaine found me in the dark. She put her hand on my arm and said nothing. We stood there together, two strangers in the dark, holding on to each other because there was nothing else to hold on to. We gathered our things, a backpack each, the battery-powered radio, the first aid kit, the letters from the storeroom, the ones written by listeners who had been gone for decades. I could not leave them behind. They felt important somehow, like they were part of the story we were still writing. We walked to the front door. I put my hand on the deadbolt. I thought about the thing in the stairwell, the tall thing with the wrong angles and the hollow eyes. I thought about the whispers in the church on Maple Street and all the things that waited outside. Are you ready? Elaine asked. No, I was not ready, but I had to be. I opened the door. The air outside was cold, colder than it had been when I last stepped out of this building. The sky was dark, the street empty, the silence absolute. For a moment, I thought we were alone. I thought maybe the whispers had moved on, had found somewhere else to gather. Then I heard it. A whisper, faint at first, then louder, then another, then another. They were coming from everywhere. Elaine grabbed my hand. We started to walk, moving quickly, staying in the shadows of the buildings. The whispers followed us. They filled the air around us, pressing against our minds, trying to find a way in. I focused on Elaine's hand. I focused on the warmth of it, the realness of it, the proof that I was not alone. I kept my eyes on the ground and my feet moving, and I did not look back. The church was ahead of us. I could see it now, dark against the sky, its spires reaching up like fingers. The whispers were loudest there, thickest there, like a fog of sound that surrounded everything. I could feel them pulling at me, trying to turn me toward the church, trying to make me walk toward the darkness. Elaine pulled me the other way. She led me down a side street, away from the church, away from the whispers. We moved faster, almost running, our footsteps echoing against the empty buildings. We did not stop until we could not hear them anymore. We collapsed in a doorway, breathing hard, trying to find our bearings. The city stretched out around us, dark and silent and full of things we could not see. Elaine turned to me. She was scared. I could see it in her eyes, the same fear I felt. Where do we go now? She asked. I did not have an answer. This is Arthur. You are listening to the radio during a vampire apocalypse, or at least you were. I do not know if the signal is still reaching anyone. I do not know if the transmitter is still working without the generator, but I am still here. Elaine is still here, and we are still walking. I will keep talking, as long as I can, as long as my voice holds out. This is Arthur. I am still here. We are still here. We walked through the night. The city was a graveyard of everything that had once been ordinary. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of streets, their doors hanging open like wounded mouths. Storefronts were shattered, their contents scattered across sidewalks like offerings to a god that had stopped listening. Every shadow seemed to move, every corner seemed to hide something waiting to reach out. and pull us into the dark. Elaine led the way. She moved with a confidence that I did not have, a sense of direction that seemed almost instinctual. She would pause at intersections, tilt her head as if listening to something I could not hear, and then choose a direction and move forward without hesitation. I followed because I had no other choice. I followed because she had walked through this city before, had survived it, had found her way to my voice in the darkness. The whispers faded as we moved away from the church. They did not disappear entirely. They were always there, at the edge of everything, a constant reminder that we were not alone. But they grew quieter, more distant, like a conversation happening in another room. I could almost pretend they were not there. We found the house just before dawn. It was on a street called Hill Street, which was ironic because there was no hill anywhere in sight. It was a small house, old and weathered, with a porch that sagged in the middle and windows that had been boarded up from the inside. Elaine stopped in front of it and nodded, like she had been expecting to find it. I stayed here once, she said, early on, before I found the station. The people who lived here, they were already gone, but they left the doors unlocked and the windows boarded. It felt safe. She pushed open the gate and walked up the path. I followed, my hand tight on the hammer I still carried. The front door was unlocked, just as she had said. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The house was dark, the windows were boarded, as she had said, and no light could get in. But there was furniture, old and dusty but intact. A couch, a table, a bookshelf filled with books that had not been read in years. Someone had lived here once, had made this place a home, had filled it with the small objects of a life that was now gone. Elaine moved through the rooms with the ease of someone who had been here before. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedrooms. She found candles in a drawer and matches in a cupboard. She lit one and placed it on the table, and the small flame pushed back the darkness just enough to make the room feel almost normal. "We can stay here for a while," she said. "Rest. Figure out what to do next." I sat down on the couch. It was lumpy and uncomfortable, but I did not care. I was tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. I was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of trying to survive in a world that did not want me to survive. Elaine sat across from me. She looked just as tired as I felt, maybe more. She had been walking through this city for weeks, searching for something, someone, a reason to keep going. She had found me, but I was not sure if that was enough. "We need to find more supplies," she said. "Food, water, batteries. The things we brought from the station will not last long. There is a grocery store a few blocks from here," I said. "I used to shop there before. It is small, but it might still have something left." "We will check it tomorrow," she said, "when it is light. We should not be out at night, not unless we have to." I nodded. I understood. The night belonged to them now. The whispers, the things that used to be human, the shapes that moved in the darkness. The night was their time, and we were only visitors. I slept on the couch that night. And Elaine slept in the bedroom, with the door closed and a chair propped against the handle. I did not sleep well. I kept dreaming about the church on Maple Street, about the whispers that filled the air around it, about the thing in the stairwell with the hollow eyes and the wrong angles. When I woke up, it was morning. The light was filtering through the cracks in the boarded windows, pale and weak but still light. I sat up and looked around the room, half expecting to see something waiting in the corners. There was nothing. Elaine came out of the bedroom a few minutes later. She looked better than she had the night before, more rested, more alert. She had found a coat in one of the closets, a heavy wool coat that was too big for her but looked warm. She had also found a bag, a canvas tote, that she had filled with things from the house. "There are canned goods in the kitchen," she said. "Not much, but enough for a few days, and there is a well in the backyard. I checked it last night. The water is clean." I felt something close to hope, not the grand, sweeping hope of a rescue, not the hope that everything would go back to normal. It was a strange thing to do, going through the belongings of people who were gone. There were photographs on the walls, a family, a couple, children who were grown now or maybe never grew up. There were letters in the drawers, unsent or unread. There were clothes in the closets, coats and dresses and shoes that would never be worn again. Elaine found a radio in one of the bedrooms, an old radio, the kind that ran on batteries, with a dial that turned through frequencies with a soft clicking sound. She brought it to the kitchen and turned it on. There was static at first, just the same hiss that filled the air everywhere. But then, faintly, almost too faint to hear, there was a voice, a woman's voice. It was speaking in a language I did not recognize, or maybe it was speaking in English, and the words were just too distorted to understand. The signal was weak, distant, like it was coming from somewhere far away. "Do you hear that?" Elaine asked. "I hear it." She turned the dial, trying to find a clearer signal. The voice faded in and out, sometimes clear enough to catch a word, sometimes just static. But it was there, a voice, someone else, somewhere, still broadcasting. "We are not alone," I said. "We were never alone," Elaine said. "There are others out there. There have to be. We just have to find them." She kept turning the dial, searching for more signals. She found another one, this one closer, this one clearer. It was a man's voice, speaking in English, saying something about supplies and safe zones, and a place called Haven. The signal was intermittent, fading in and out, but the words were clear enough to understand. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "I heard it," she said. "Haven." He said there is a place called Haven, somewhere safe, somewhere the whispers cannot reach. We looked at each other. The same thought was in both of our minds. Could it be real? Could there actually be a place where people were still living, still human, still safe? "It could be a trap," Elaine said. "The whispers can mimic voices. They can sound like anyone." "I know, but it could also be real. It could be a chance." She looked at the radio, at the crackling voice that was still speaking in the background. I could see the conflict in her face, the desire to believe, the fear of being wrong. "We need to know more," she said finally. "We need to find out where this place is. If it is real, if it is safe, then maybe..." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. I knew what she was thinking. If Haven was real, if there was a place where people were still alive, still human, still fighting, then maybe we did not have to do this alone. "We will find out," I said. "We will keep listening. We will find the signal again." The voice faded, the static returned, but we had heard it. We had heard the word, the promise, the possibility. There was a place called Haven, and we were going to find it. "This is Arthur. I am still here. Elaine is still here, and we are still listening." The radio became our world. Elaine and I spent the next 2 days in that house on Hill Street, listening to the static, waiting for the voice to return. We took turns at the dial, turning it slowly, carefully, searching through the frequencies for any sign of the signal we had heard. We barely slept. We barely ate. The possibility of Haven, the chance that there was somewhere safe, somewhere the whispers could not reach, drove us forward. On the third day, the voice came back. It was the same man's voice, clear and steady, speaking in a calm tone that reminded me of how I used to sound when I was broadcasting. He was talking about supplies, about organization, about the importance of staying together and staying safe. He was giving instructions, practical instructions, the kind of thing you would hear on a news broadcast in the old world. "This is Haven," he said. "We are broadcasting on this frequency every day at noon and midnight. If you can hear us, you are not alone. There are others out there. There is hope." Elaine grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, almost painful. "Arthur, did you hear that? Did you hear what he said?" "I heard it. We need to respond. We need to let them know we are here." She was right. Of course she was right. But I did not know how. The radio we had was old, a receiver only. It could not transmit, it could only listen. We need a transmitter, I said. We need a way to send our voice back to them. Elaine's face fell. She had thought of that too, probably before I had, but the hope in her eyes did not disappear. It flickered, but it stayed. There is a radio station in the next neighborhood, she said. I passed it on my way to find you. It is small, like yours, but it might still have equipment. It might still work. I thought about my own station, the one I had left behind. I thought about the transmitter in the booth, the one that had carried my voice for days. I thought about the generator dying, about the silence that followed. The equipment might be dead, I said. Without power, without generators, it might not work. It might, she said. It might still have backup power. It might still be running. We have to check. We have to try. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that it was too dangerous, that we did not know what was out there, that we could not take the risk. But I looked at her face, at the hope that was burning in her eyes, and I could not say no. We left the house that evening, just before dusk. We packed what we could carry, the radio, the few supplies we had left, and we walked into the darkening streets. The neighborhood was different from the one I had known. There were fewer cars, fewer signs of life. The buildings were older, more run down, like they had been abandoned long before the whispers began. Elaine moved through the streets with the same confidence she had shown before, her head tilted, her eyes scanning the shadows. It is not far, she said, just a few blocks. We will be there before it gets fully dark. I followed her. I kept my hand on the hammer, my eyes on the edges of the shadows. The whispers were quiet tonight. I could barely hear them, just a faint murmur at the edge of everything. I did not know if that was a good sign or a bad one. The station was a small building, tucked between two larger buildings that had once been shops. There was a sign above the door, faded and cracked, that read, WSPD Radio. The door was locked, but Elaine found a window that was cracked and managed to slide it open. We climbed inside. The station was dark, but there was equipment everywhere. A console, microphones, speakers, racks of electronic components that I did not recognize. Elaine moved through the room with purpose, checking the equipment, looking for signs of power. There is a generator, she said, in the basement. It is a diesel generator, bigger than the one at your station. It might still have fuel. We found the stairs and descended into the basement. The generator was there, just as she had said. It was old, covered in dust, but it looked intact. Elaine checked the fuel gauge and let out a breath. There is enough, she said. Not much, but enough for a few broadcasts. Enough to send a signal. I felt something shift in my chest. Hope, I think. Real hope, the kind I had not let myself feel since the beginning. We started the generator. It sputtered at first, coughing and grinding like it had not been used in years. But then it caught, settled into a steady hum, and the lights in the station flickered on. Elaine climbed the stairs to the booth. She sat down in the chair, in front of the microphone, and she looked at me with an expression that was almost joyful. This is it, she said. This is how we reach them. She turned on the transmitter. She adjusted the frequency, finding the one we had heard, the one that carried the voice of Haven. Then she leaned into the microphone and spoke. This is Elaine, she said. I am broadcasting from a small station in the city. I am here with Arthur. We heard your broadcast. We are alive. We are listening. She paused. She looked at me. I nodded. We need help, she said. We need to know where Haven is. We need to know how to find you. She released the button and we waited. The static hissed. The seconds stretched into minutes. I started to think that we had been wrong, that the signal was one way, that no one was listening. Then there was a voice, a woman's voice, not the man we had heard before. She sounded tired but clear, like she had been expecting us. We hear you, Elaine. We hear you, Arthur. Haven is real. It is safe. We have been waiting for others others to find us. She gave us coordinates, streets, landmarks, directions. It was not far, a few miles outside the city, in a place that had been abandoned before the Whispers but had been reclaimed now, made safe. "We are here," the woman said. "We are waiting. Come to us. Be careful. The Whispers are everywhere, but they cannot reach Haven. We do not know why. We do not care. It is safe. It is real." The signal faded. The static returned, but we had heard enough. Elaine turned to me. Her eyes were bright, almost shining. "Arthur, did you hear that? It is real. Haven is real." I did not know what to say. I was happy, I think. Happy and scared and hopeful and terrified all at once. But one thing was clear. We had a destination. We had a purpose. We had a chance. "We leave at dawn," I said. "We gather what we can and we leave at dawn." She nodded. She did not argue. She just sat back in the chair and let out a long breath, like she had been holding it for weeks. We spent the night in the station. We listened to the signal from Haven, which came again at midnight, repeating the same instructions, the same promises. We packed what we could carry, the radio, the supplies, the letters from the storeroom that I still carried in my backpack. When the first light of dawn began to filter through the boarded windows, we were ready. We walked out of the station and into the street. The sky was pale, the color of old bone. The Whispers were quiet, almost silent, like they were sleeping. We moved quickly, staying in the shadows, heading toward the edge of the city. It was not far, a few miles, but in this world, a few miles was a lifetime. We saw them once, just once. They were standing in the middle of a street we had to cross. 3 of them, their shapes dark against the pale sky. They did not move. They did not speak. They just stood there, watching us, waiting for something. Elaine pulled me into a doorway. We stayed there, frozen, barely breathing. The things in the street did not follow. They just watched, and then they turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I do not know why they let us go. Maybe they were not hungry. Maybe they were playing with us, the way the thing in the stairwell had played with me. Maybe they knew something we did not. But we kept moving. We kept walking. And eventually the city ended and the countryside began, and we saw something in the distance. A wall, a fence, lights, Haven. "This is Arthur. I am still here. Elaine is still here. And we have found what we were looking for." The wall was taller than I had expected. It rose up from the ground like something that had grown there. A barrier of wood and metal and whatever else the people inside had been able to find. There were lights on top of it, battery-powered or solar. I could not tell from this distance. The lights flickered in the darkness, casting long shadows across the ground. We stood at the edge of the field, looking at the wall, trying to process what we were seeing. After so many weeks of darkness and whispers, and the constant feeling of being hunted, the sight of something built by human hands, something meant to keep people safe, felt almost unreal. "Is it real?" Elaine asked. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. "It looks real, but how can we be sure?" I did not have an answer. I wanted to believe it was real. I wanted to believe that the people inside were human, that the Whispers could not reach them, that we had finally found somewhere safe. But I had been fooled before, by the whispers that sounded like human voices, by the shapes that moved in the darkness, by the hope that turned out to be nothing. "We need to get closer," I said. "We need to see if there is a way in." We walked across the field, staying low, keeping to the shadows. The grass was tall and dry, rustling against our legs as we moved. The wall grew larger as we approached, more solid, more real. I could see the lights more clearly now, could see the way they were arranged at regular intervals, could see the gaps between them where the wall was dark. There was a gate, a large gate, made of metal, with hinges that looked like they had been welded by hand. There was a guard tower next to it, a simple structure built from scrap wood, with a light at the top the edge of the light. We did not want to be seen. Not yet. Not until we knew who was on the other side. But the figure in the tower must have spotted us, because a voice called out, sharp and clear. "Who is there? Identify yourselves." I looked at Elaine. She looked at me. We had come this far. There was no turning back now. "My name is Arthur," I called out. "I am a survivor. I used to broadcast from a radio station in the city. This is Elaine. We heard your signal. We came to find you." There was a long pause. The figure in the tower moved, reaching for something I could not see. I tensed, ready to run, ready to drag Elaine back into the darkness. But then the figure spoke again, and this time the voice was softer. "Approach the gate. Keep your hands visible. If you have any weapons, leave them at the gate." I looked at the hammer in my hand. I had been carrying it for weeks, holding it like a talisman, like it could protect me from everything that was out there. But I set it down on the ground, right where the guard could see it. Elaine did the same with the small knife she had been carrying. We walked toward the gate. The light from the tower fell on us, bright and harsh, and I blinked against it. The figure climbed down from the tower and walked to the gate. I could see her now, a woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing a coat that looked like it had once belonged to a soldier. She studied us through the bars of the gate. Her eyes moved across our faces, our clothes, the bags we carried. She was looking for something. I did not know what. Maybe she was looking for signs that we were not human. Maybe she was looking for the hollow eyes, the wrong angles, the things that marked the whispers. "You look tired," she said finally. "You look like you have been walking for a long time." "We have," I said. "We came from the city. We walked through the night to get here." She nodded, like she understood. Then she unlocked the gate and pulled it open. Just a crack, just wide enough for us to squeeze through. "Welcome to Haven," she said. The inside of Haven was not what I had expected. I had imagined something like a military base, orderly and organized, with rows of tents and strict rules. But it was more like a small town, a village that had been built from the remnants of the old world. There were houses, small and simple, made from salvaged materials. There were gardens, neat rows of vegetables growing under the flickering lights. There were people, dozens of them, moving through the streets like they had somewhere to be. The woman led us through the gate and into the heart of the settlement. She introduced herself as Ruth, one of the founders of Haven. She walked with a brisk, efficient stride, and she talked as she walked, pointing out the different parts of the settlement. "That is the clinic. We have a doctor, a retired emergency room physician. She is not always able to help, but she does what she can. That is the common house, where we eat together when there is enough food. That is the school, such as it is. We have children here, a dozen of them. They need to learn, even now." We passed a group of people who were working on a new building, raising walls made of wood and scrap metal. They waved as we passed, friendly and welcoming. I felt something loosen in my chest, something I had not realized was tight. "You are not the first," Ruth said. "We have been accepting survivors for weeks. Some come alone, like you. Some come in groups. We have a process, a quarantine period, to make sure you are not infected." "Infected?" Elaine asked. "The whispers. They do not infect people. They just take them." Ruth stopped walking. She turned to face us, and her expression was serious. "The whispers do not just take people," she said. "They transform them. The things that walk out there, the things that used to be human, they were changed. The whispers get inside you, change you, twist you. That is why we have the quarantine, to make sure the change has not started." I felt cold. I had not thought about it like that. I had thought of the whispers as something external, something that could be resisted, something that could be escaped. But if they could get inside you, if they could change you from the inside out. "We have not been touched," Elaine said. "We have been careful. We have not let them near us." Ruth looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "We will see," she said. "We have a doctor who can check you. If you are clean, you can stay. If you are not, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. They took us to the clinic. The doctor was a woman named Margaret, old and tired but sharp-eyed. She examined us, took samples of our blood, asked us questions about where we had been and what we had seen. She checked our eyes, our ears, the inside of our mouths. She was thorough, careful, methodical. When she was done, she sat back in her chair and let out a breath. "You are clean," she said. "No signs of infection. You are human." I felt relief wash over me, so strong that I almost collapsed. Elaine grabbed my arm, steadying me. She looked just as relieved as I felt, just as grateful to hear those words. "You can stay," Margaret said. "Ruth will find you a place to sleep, a job to do. We all work here. We all contribute. That is how Haven survives." She gave us a small house, just a single room with 2 cots and a table. It was not much, but it was more than we had had in weeks. A roof, walls, a door that locked, the sound of other human voices just outside. We sat on the cots, looking at each other, trying to process everything that had happened. We had made it. We had found Haven. We were safe. "Are you okay?" Elaine asked. I nodded. "I think so. I think I will be." She smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen from her since we met. We slept that night, truly slept, for the first time in what felt like forever. The whispers were gone. The fear was gone. For one night, at least, we were safe. This is Arthur. I am still here. Elaine is still here. And for the first time in weeks, I think we might be okay. The days in Haven settled into a rhythm. It was a strange thing, after so many weeks of constant fear and movement, to have a routine again, to wake up at the same time each day, to eat at the same table, to do the same work. It felt almost like the old world, like the life I had before everything fell apart. I was given a job in the communications center. It was a small building near the center of the settlement, filled with equipment that had been salvaged from abandoned stations and stores. There was a transmitter, a receiver, a bank of batteries that were constantly being charged by solar panels on the roof. It was not much, but it was enough to reach out into the darkness, to listen for other voices, to broadcast the signal that had brought us here. Ruth told me that Haven had been broadcasting for weeks before we heard it. They had been sending out the same message, day after day, hoping that someone would hear it, hoping that someone would come. I was the first. Elaine was the second. Since then, a few others had trickled in, survivors from other parts of the city, other towns, other places I had never heard of. I spent my days at the receiver, listening to the static, waiting for a voice that might never come. It was lonely work, but I did not mind. I had been alone before. I knew how to fill the silence with my own thoughts. Elaine was given a job in the gardens. She spent her days planting and weeding and harvesting, working alongside the other residents of Haven. She seemed to enjoy it, the physical labor, the feeling of creating something that would keep people alive. She came back to our small house each evening with dirt under her fingernails and a tired smile on her face. We did not talk much about what we had been through. It was too fresh, too close. The memories of the city, the whispers, the things we had seen, they were still there, just below the surface. But we did not need to talk about them. We had each other. We had Haven. That was enough. One evening, Ruth came to find me at the communications center. She looked tired, more tired than usual, like she had not been sleeping well. "Arthur, I need to talk to you," she said. "There is something I have not told you about Haven." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had been waiting for this, I realized. I had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the safe haven to reveal its hidden danger. "What is it?" I asked. She sat down across from me. She took a long breath, like she was gathering her strength. "Haven is safe," she said. "The whispers cannot reach us here. We do not know why. It might be the location, something about the ground, something about the water. It might be the walls, the way they are built. But whatever the reason, they cannot get in. She paused. She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. But we are running out of time, she said. The supplies we have, the food, the water, the fuel for the generators. We have been rationing, stretching everything as far as it will go. But we cannot stretch it forever. There are too many of us now. Too many mouths to feed. I understood. I had been thinking about it myself. The way the food was portioned out, the way the lights were turned off at night to save the batteries. Haven was not a paradise. It was a lifeboat, and lifeboats could only hold so many people. What are you saying? I asked. I am saying that we need to find more supplies, she said. We need to send someone out, someone who knows the city, someone who can find what we need and bring it back. She looked at me. I understood what she was asking. You want me to go back? I want you to consider it. You know the city. You survived there for weeks. You know where the supplies might be. I thought about it. I thought about the city, the dark streets, the whispers, the things that moved in the shadows. I thought about the church on Maple Street, and the thing in the stairwell, and the sound of wet cloth dragging on pavement. I will think about it, I said. I cannot give you an answer tonight. She nodded. She stood up and walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back to look at me. Arthur, there is something else. Something I have not told anyone. I waited. The whispers are getting stronger, she said. They are pressing against the walls, trying to find a way in. I do not know how much longer Haven will hold. I do not know if the walls will keep them out forever. I felt the cold again. The same cold I had felt in the stairwell. The same cold I had felt when I saw the thing in the street. The whispers were not just outside. They were pressing, trying to get in. How long? I asked. I do not know, she said. Maybe weeks, maybe days, but we cannot wait. We need to act. We need to find a way to survive, or we need to find another place, another haven, somewhere farther away. She left. I sat in the communications center, staring at the receiver, listening to the static. The whispers were not on the frequency. They were never on the frequency, but I could feel them, pressing at the edges of my mind, waiting for a moment of weakness. When I got back to our small house, Elaine was already there. She was sitting on her cot, reading a book she had found somewhere. She looked up when I came in, and she must have seen something in my face because she set the book down and asked what was wrong. I told her. I told her about the supplies, about Ruth's request, about the whispers pressing against the walls. She listened without interrupting. When I was finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I will go with you, she said finally. Elaine, you do not have to. This is not your responsibility. It is my responsibility, she said. I am part of this community. We are both part of it. If they need supplies, we need to help. And I know the city too. I walked through it for weeks. I know where things are. She was right. Of course she was right. But I did not want to go back. I did not want to walk through those dark streets again. To hear the whispers. To see the things that used to be human. We will leave in 2 days, I said. We will gather what we can carry, and we will go back to the city. We will find supplies, and we will bring them back. She nodded. She did not argue. She just reached out and took my hand, and we sat there together in the small house, holding on to each other in the darkness. This is Arthur. I am still here. Elaine is still here, and we are going back. The morning we left Haven was cold and gray. The sky was the color of old pewter, heavy with clouds that promised rain but never delivered. Elaine and I stood at the gate with our packs on our backs, looking back at the settlement we had come to think of as home. Ruth was there to see us off. She stood at the gate with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Behind her, a small crowd had gathered, residents who had come to wish us well or simply to watch us leave. I recognized some of them. The doctor, Margaret. A few of the children from the school. They waved as we walked through the gate, their faces hopeful and worried in equal measure. "Be careful," Ruth said. "The city is not the same as it was when you left. It has been weeks. Things have changed." I nodded. I did not ask what she meant. I did not want to know. We walked across the field, back toward the road that led to the city. The grass was brown and dry, crunching under our feet. The sky was still gray, still heavy, still threatening. I kept my eyes on the horizon, watching for movement, watching for anything that did not belong. The city appeared slowly, rising out of the landscape like a ghost. First the buildings on the outskirts, then the taller structures in the center, then the familiar landmarks that I had not realized I remembered. The church on Maple Street was there, its spires dark against the sky. I looked away from it. I did not want to see it. We entered the city through the same route we had left, following the streets that Elaine had led me through weeks before. The cars were still there, abandoned and rusting. The storefronts were still shattered, their contents still scattered across the sidewalks. But there was something different about the city now, something I could not quite name. It was quieter, not the quiet of emptiness, but the quiet of waiting, like the whole city was holding its breath. We found a grocery store on the edge of a residential neighborhood. It was small, the kind of store that had been run by a family for generations. The windows were broken, the door hanging open. Inside, the shelves were mostly empty, picked clean by survivors who had come before us. But in the back, in a storeroom that had been hidden behind a false wall, we found what we were looking for. Canned goods, bottled water, batteries, a few boxes of medical supplies. It was not much, but it was enough. Enough to keep Haven going for a few more weeks, maybe longer. We loaded our packs. We worked quickly, efficiently, not speaking. The silence of the city pressed in around us, heavy and oppressive. I kept expecting to hear the whispers, kept expecting to see something moving in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the silence and the waiting. We were almost done when I heard it. A sound, faint at first, then louder. The sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from somewhere deeper in the store. I froze. Elaine froze. We looked at each other, and I saw the same fear in her eyes that I felt in my chest. "The back room," I whispered. "There is a back room, a door. We can hide there." We moved quickly, quietly, sliding into the back room and pulling the door closed behind us. There was a small window, covered in grime, that looked out onto the alley behind the store. I pressed my eye to it, trying to see what was out there. The footsteps grew louder. They were in the store now, walking through the aisles, moving with a slow, deliberate pace. I could see a shape through the crack in the door, dark and tall, moving with the wrong angles I remembered so well. It stopped. It stood in the middle of the store, directly between us and the exit. I held my breath. I could feel Elaine beside me, shaking, her hand gripping my arm so tightly it hurt. The thing turned. It looked directly at the door, at us. I waited for it to move, to come toward us, to do whatever it had come to do, but it just stood there, watching. And then, slowly, it turned and walked away. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Elaine sagged against me, relief flooding her face. "Let's go," I said, "now, before it comes back." We slipped out of the storeroom and through the broken door of the store. We did not run. Running attracted attention. We walked quickly, staying in the shadows, keeping our eyes on the street ahead of us. We did not stop until we were out of the neighborhood, until we were back on the main road that led out of the city. We collapsed against the wall of a building, breathing hard, trying to calm our racing hearts. "We need to get back," Elaine said. "We need to get back to Haven. We need to tell them what we found." I nodded. I wanted to go back. I wanted to be behind the walls, to feel safe, to forget what I had seen in that store. But I could not shake the feeling that something was different. The city was not just waiting, it was changing, evolving. The whispers were not just outside, they were everywhere, pressing against the edges of everything, trying to find a way in. We walked for hours, following the road out of the city, through the outskirts, into the countryside. The sky grew darker, the clouds thickened, and then, just as the sun began to set, we saw something in the distance. Smoke, a column of smoke, rising into the gray sky, thick and black. It was coming from the direction of Haven. We started to run. We ran through the fields, across the roads, toward the smoke that was growing thicker, darker, closer. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I did not stop. I could not stop. We reached the edge of the field where Haven had been. We stopped. We stared. The walls were still standing, but they were damaged, breached. There were holes in them, gaps where something had broken through. The lights were still on, but they flickered, casting strange shadows across the ground. And the smoke was rising from the center of the settlement, from the buildings that had been our home. I ran toward the gate. Elaine followed. We pushed through the broken gate, through the gaps in the wall, into the chaos of Haven. People were everywhere, running, shouting, trying to put out fires, trying to help the wounded, trying to make sense of what had happened. I saw Ruth in the middle of it all, her face streaked with soot, her voice hoarse from shouting. "What happened?" I asked. "What did this?" She looked at me. Her eyes were dark, haunted. "They found a way in," she said. "The whispers. They found a way through the wall." I looked around. I saw the damage, the destruction, the people who were hurt and scared. I saw the fear in their eyes, the same fear I had felt in the city. "We need to leave," I said. "We cannot stay here. They will come back." Ruth looked at me. She nodded slowly. "Gather everyone," she said. "We leave at dawn. This is Arthur. I am still here. Elaine is still here. And Haven is no longer safe." Dawn came slowly, reluctantly, like the sun was afraid to show its face. The sky was still that same pale gray, heavy with clouds that had not yet broken. Haven was chaos around us, people packing what little they could carry, tending to wounds, saying goodbye to the homes they had built. I found Elaine in the crowd. She was helping an elderly woman load her belongings into a cart that someone had fashioned from scrap wood and old wheels. She looked up when I approached, and I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the same exhaustion I felt in my own bones. "Arthur," she said, "they are all leaving. Everyone. Ruth says we need to go as far as we can, as fast as we can." I nodded. I had already packed my own bag, the same bag I had carried through the city, through the weeks of running and hiding. I had added a few things from Haven, a blanket, some food, the letters from the station that I still could not bear to leave behind. Ruth found us at the gate. She was wearing the same coat she had worn the first time we met, the soldier's coat that made her look tougher than she probably felt. Her face was grim, but there was a determination in her eyes that I had not seen before. "We are leaving in waves," she said, "small groups, moving in different directions. It is safer that way. If one group is caught, the others will survive." She looked at me, then at Elaine. "I want you two to lead one of the groups. You have survived out there before. You know what to look for." I did not argue. There was no point. We were all in this together now. All of us survivors. All of us running from the same darkness. We gathered our group. There were 7 of us, including a young couple with a small child and an older man who had been a teacher before everything fell apart. We were not armed. We did not have much food or water, but we had each other, and that was more than we had had before. We left through the broken gate, walking into the gray morning. The countryside stretched out before us, empty and silent. The whispers were quiet for now, but I knew they would not stay that way for long. We walked for hours. We followed the roads, staying in the shadows of the trees that lined them. The land was flat, open, and we could see for miles in every direction. I kept watching the horizon, waiting for movement, waiting for something to appear. The old teacher, his name was Harold, walked beside me. He was quiet most of the time, but after a while he started to talk. He told me about his life before, about the school where he had taught history for 40 years, about the students he had watched grow up and move on. He talked about his wife, who had died years before the whispers came, and about the son who had moved to another city and was probably gone now. I have been thinking about what I would say if I could talk to my son again, Harold said. I never got the chance. He was far away when all of this happened. I do not even know if he is still alive. What would you say? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I would tell him that I loved him. I would tell him that I was proud of him. I would tell him that no matter what happens, I would not change anything. He was the best thing I ever did. I did not know what to say to that, so I just walked beside him, and we kept moving. The sun was high in the sky when we saw the first sign of the whispers, a shape in the distance, dark and tall, standing in the middle of the road. It did not move, it just watched. We stopped. The group gathered around me, waiting for instructions. I looked at Elaine. She looked back at me, and I saw the same fear in her eyes that I felt. We need to go around, I said. Stay together, stay quiet. We moved off the road, into the fields. The grass was tall and dry, rustling against our legs. I kept my eyes on the shape in the distance, watching for any sign of movement. It did not move. It just stood there, watching. We walked for another hour. The shape disappeared behind a rise, and I allowed myself to hope that we had escaped. But then there was another shape, closer this time, and another, and another. They were everywhere, standing in the fields, in the roads, in the distance, watching, waiting. We cannot keep going, Elaine said. They are hurting us. They are pushing us somewhere. I looked around. She was right. The shapes were surrounding us, cutting off our escape routes, driving us toward a single point in the distance. A building, a large building, dark against the gray sky. A church, the church on Maple Street. No, I said, we cannot go there. We cannot, but we did not have a choice. The shapes were closing in, moving slowly, deliberately. We were being pushed toward the church, toward the darkness that waited inside. We reached the church just as the sun began to set. The doors were open, gaping like a mouth. The whispers were loud here, so loud that I could barely hear my own thoughts. The group huddled together, waiting for instructions that I did not have. Arthur, Elaine said. Her voice was quiet, almost calm. We are not going to make it. You know that, right? I looked at her. I saw the acceptance in her eyes, the resignation that came from weeks of running and hiding. There is still a chance, I said. There is always a chance. She shook her head. No, there is not. But I wanted you to know something. I am glad I found you. I am glad I walked through the city to find your voice. You made me feel less alone. I did not know what to say. I did not know how to say goodbye. But then I remembered something. The letters in my pack, the ones from the station, the ones written by people who had been gone for decades. They had said what they needed to say. They had reached out across the darkness and made a connection. I took out my pack. I found the radio, the small battery-powered radio that had brought us here. I turned it on. I found the frequency, the one that had carried the voice of Haven. And I started to speak. If you can hear me, I said, if there is anyone out there listening, I want you to know that you are not alone. I am here. I have always been here, and I will keep speaking as long as I can. The whispers grew louder. They pressed against the edges of the broadcast, trying to drown me out, but I kept speaking. Remember what it was like to be human, I said. Remember the warmth of the sun, and the sound of laughter, and the feeling of someone's hand in yours. Do not let them take that away from from you. Do not let them make you forget. Hello. The shapes were at the doors now, filling the entrance, their hollow eyes staring at us. I could feel the cold spreading through the air, the wrongness of their presence. But I did not stop speaking. I have a name, I said. My name is Arthur, and I am still human. I am still here. I will always be here. The whispers surged. The shapes moved forward. Elaine grabbed my hand. And I kept speaking, into the static, into the darkness, into the end of everything. This is Arthur. This is the end. But I was still here. I was still speaking, and I would not stop. Not until the very end. Not until the silence claimed